This is the instructional design process, step 1, needs assessment and instructional goals lecture recording. As I said in the 7 steps instructional design process or instructional design strategy overview, the needs assessment and instructional goals are the first step because this is the step where you decide whether or not the instruction needs to happen at all. So this is actually the needs assessment is critical, but it doesn't have to be at this stage very in depth. You're looking at, in general, learner characteristics. Who are the potential learners? What do they already know? What do they need to be able to know to engage in the training? And why do the learners need to know your planned concepts and skills? This is a preliminary check on what you're going to do in step 3 with entry behaviors and learner characteristics. You're going to go into more depth with step 3. So you are not doing the same thing. Sometimes some of you will go into such depth at this stage that you'll have most of step 3 done. But remember, all of these steps are iterative and reiterative. You will be reusing your answers to questions in each step. And in step 1 is very much going to be used later on in other steps. You're also going to look at extant materials. What kinds of materials, tools, or learning objects exist already to support the instruction? This is not the same thing as step 6, where you're going to plan for your own instructional materials, although some of the things you locate may be useful when you're planning for in step 6. But what we're looking for right now in particular is does instruction already exist? Do you need to create new instruction? Can you just refer your learners to existing instruction that's been offered elsewhere? This actually happened very recently. I had a student inquire if I knew of any instructional design standalone tutorials that he could share with faculty at his library, because the university he works at is not supporting faculty in terms of teaching them instructional design. And I was able, as we'll talk about later, to show him, to show that there are in fact standalone instructional design tutorials that he could share with his faculty. So he does not need to design new instruction for his faculty. What he needed was already available. The excuse me. The other thing you want to decide at this needs assessment step is who's the best person to design the instruction, who is the best person to do the teaching. Who is it? You? Somebody else? It's very important to be thinking about what your resources are, who's available. Do you have somebody who's very good at instructional design? You have somebody who's a subject expert. Subject experts are not necessarily going to be good teachers or good instructional designers. They may know a lot, but they may not be able to communicate it well. So it's often a good thing to be aware of that and make decisions based on what access you have. My student example, they don't have support. They don't have instructional designers to support faculty in designing instruction. So the subject expert, the faculty member, is on their own. So the answer, there is no right answer to any of these things. This is an answer to be, this needs assessment is what do you need? What's available to you? For the lecture for this, for the needs assessment we're working out the example needs assessment for a 4-week instructional unit on instructional design for library staff. This is a real instructional unit that I've been working on. And our learner characteristics, I can assume that they know how to use a keyboard and they have email and web browser basic skills. I need to make sure they know how to interact with web forms, email, and how to use a web browser. I estimated that they had 40 hours available, 10 hours a week to do the instruction. However, that turned out to be inaccurate. After the instruction was done through one pass, formative evaluation showed that my learners had only 3 to 5 hours a week and tending more towards the 3 hours a week. So the instruction had to be revised and redone so that it would require less time per week. And also that means less content, less learning happens. So we'll have to do some additional units to add on to that over time, I think. The extant materials bibliographies of readings from all sorts of practical reports and research on the topic, external web links with lots of readings and practice sites. You can see these in your own reading list for this course. Learning objects, existing tutorials, multimedia files, lots and lots. An entire unit of instruction available to repurpose if you wanted to do so. Um, Obviously, citing, those are intellectual property of other people, of other organizations. And we also had the Moodle open source LMS available. So we had a good firm basis on which to design this instruction. I was contracted to research, design, and teach this for specific library staff for particular purpose. So they wanted customized, not just to send them to the online tutorials. And what we wanted also, the outcome was that anyone who completes the unit would be able to teach it in the future as well. So they wanted an instructional designer, and I had access to um, additional subject experts in addition to myself. I'm going to go back and next to our next concept for step 1, instructional goals or instructional goal. The questions to be asked and answered. The real question, the core question for instructional goals is, why do the learners need this instruction? Why does the instruction need to happen? And what should be the outcome in terms of achievement of that goal? Instructional goals are not the same thing as learning outcomes or what we used to call performance or learning objectives. These are a general statement based on the needs assessment description of the learner about why they need to be able to perform a skill or have knowledge of some kind. Your goal statement can include the domain of knowledge that the learner will be working with: verbal, intellectual, psychomotor, and attitudes. We work a lot with attitude change. The instructional goal statement, along with instructional analysis that you'll do with step 2, will guide the development of your specific learning outcomes, or learning objectives as they're sometimes called. The idea here is that you are justifying the instruction. Why does it need to happen? It's very important that you do share the instructional goals with other people. This is another step at which you may discover that the instruction does not need to happen, or it's already happened, or you're misidentifying what's the highest priority or the most critical for learning for your learners. So you want to share the goals with potential learners and other interested people if you can, to get their feedback. Revise, alter the goals, and then re-review them until you have consensus or compromise. Brainstorm to get the maximum number of goals. Brainstorm with your colleagues, potential learners, managers, other interested individuals as much as you can. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can only brainstorm with yourself. You are the person appointed to do it. You're told by somebody else, this instruction is going to happen, do it. And that is something that's sometimes your answer. There's sometimes your answer is, I won't be able to obtain consensus on the goals because it's been dictated, or something like that. Goal analysis is thinking about, are the instructional goals or the instructional goal measurable, and how? This is usually not going to be a quantitative measure. It's usually going to be a qualitative measure, something along the lines of, are they doing a better job? Are they getting better evaluations from their learners? Did they earn a raise? Are they more cheerful and more positive in their attitude? Those are the kinds of things that are measurements of instructional goals being met. When we work out the instructional goals for our example 4-week instructional unit on the instructional design for library staff training, the example instructional goal statement that we reached after consulting with colleagues and previous students via email, GoToMeeting, and Skype, we came out with: participants need to learn how to formally plan and design a unit of instruction so they can be more effective trainers and teachers. There's an assumption there that by learning to formally plan and design a unit of instruction, that will make them more effective teachers or trainers. So that assumption is there. So that built in, the instructional goal is that they will learn how to do this, and and the why is that they can be more effective at teaching and training in their library context. The goal analysis, yes, we decided that we could review their completed learning activities at the end and see whether or not they progressed, whether or not their learning activities show that they are able to formally plan and design a unit of instruction and are therefore more effective. And we'll also talk about that more when we talk about follow through in step 5. Let's go back to the instructional goals overhead. That's the end of the lecture for the needs assessment and instructional goals step 1.